So now we will move on to the audience questions here, and I'll read out the questions for you. The first question is from Shweta.
Hmm.
Um, uh, you mentioned that in writing fiction, which is a complex process, one needs to craft realistic characters. Could you offer some advice on the how of it?
Absolutely. Well, so my thought with character is really get a very good sense of the person. And actually, you'll see if you're, especially if you're doing first, second, third drafts, like you'll see your character change over time. And it's because what my agent Shruti says is that, like, she's like, you're actually getting to know the characters as you're writing them. And so, that's not, don't discount that work. That's crucial work. You get to know, you understand, like with Mayank, who you're seeing is the third rendition of that character. And in the second rendition, because the book is such a contemporary story, at one time I had him going into the metaverse and things like that. The book had taken this very strange, horrible turn. And I realized, and it was just too much of a leap for the character, and so you realize through the course of the writing, through getting the feedback from, that was the feedback from my wife that I got. And then I was like, oh, that's too much, like I was doing too much or expecting too much of the character. It stretched the believability, the limits of what is believable. So be aware of who your character is. They will change, they will develop as you write, but have a good sense of, and have a good sense of what makes them what. Like there were certain things about Mayank that I knew and that didn't change in all three. One was, well, of course, that he was working for this right-wing thing, right-wing YouTuber. But secondly, I knew that he'd lost his father. For some reason, that was an important thing to me. And I had this part as part of his backstory. Like I actually wanted him to be someone who was thrown into the workforce at a very early age. And he didn't have that protective net. His mother could not, she provided for him, she raised him well, but she couldn't, he had to be, he didn't get to, fulfill the academic ambitions that he had and things like that. So these are, which is again a very lived reality in India. And so these are things, like I would say, get a good sense of who your character is. Think about them as deeply as possible, and think about a character needs. So what we say in class, what I say is, like, a character needs a desire. They need to want something, right? I'm sure you've heard this, right? It's kind of quite a basic writing thing, is that every character should want something. What does this character want? Secondary characters, tertiary characters, smallest characters. If you read a guy called John Steinbeck, I kind of teach a little section. When I'm teaching characters at Kriya, I show an excerpt of this tiny section from a novella of Steinbeck's called The Pearl. And it's this character that just pops onto page for a second. Like it's just half a page. But he paints that character so beautifully because the character wants something. He wants that pearl. So every character, it's sad to say, but human beings were defined by a desire. Sorry, it was can you hear me? Yeah. Like as
Yeah.
human beings, we're kind of defined by our desires. So everyone needs something. Like we all want something. I want to be a good writer. I want to whatever, like raise my son in the right way, all that kind of thing. Pratyusha has a certain basket of ambitions for herself. Supriya, whoever, like everyone would have a kind of things that they want out of life and things that they want. And so we forget that about our characters. And that's when a character remains static. If they don't have an overwhelming ambition or an overwhelming desire, that's a propulsion for your novel. That's the narrative, you know? So, like, if you think of a murder fiction, what does Sherlock Holmes want? He's obsessed with solving the crime, right? What does Hercule Poirot want? He's obsessed with solving the crime. Um, all characters need this. Okay, some writers are very skillful at disguising that, but you'll see that every character you can think of in fiction, every good character will have something that's propelling them forward.
Mm. The next question is from Yamini Vedya. It's also on character. How do you personalize characters while writing
Repeat this
dialogues
one.
so that
Uh, did we miss one from Nivi or VI? No?
Nive is saying it's terrifying to hear about third drafts when my first is some way from being complete. I've heard about writing a novel and something of a marathon. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's longer than a marathon. A marathon you can finish in a day. It's a very long, arduous process, but it's one of the most rewarding and wonderful things. Uh, for me, it was just like I think I mean, I remember I'm thinking back to the day that I sent off the galley proofs of Laila for the first time. Like, I'm not someone who I can't nap usually. I never sleep during the day. And I remember it was like 2 p.m. or something, and I sent that off. And my wife came, so we weren't married, and like she came, or maybe we were. Anyway, she came into the room and she just found me passed out like in the middle of the living room. It was like this exhaustion and I think relief, like I felt this huge relief, huge and happiness. It's just a wonderfully rewarding thing when you're done. But along the way, it is a very difficult journey. But again, it's part of the fun is the journey. Like it really, it's like a marathon in that sense. Like, runners, they're not doing it just to cross the finish line. It's the whole run all the way through that is powerful. That's what keeps them hooked. And honestly, like it's the puzzling out part in the fiction. That's what keeps me bringing that. Like Lila got like a lot of awards and things like that. But like you're not always you can't expect that to happen with every book. And it's discouraging and it's disheartening. Netflix is not knocking on my door from Mother India. So it's like you have to take these things. But like um but I'm still trying to work out my third thing, my next book, because the challenge, the fun thing is actually putting everything together and getting the book ready. That's why we do it. And I'm sure that's why everyone in this session who's here today is doing it. It's like all that stuff is extraneous actually. It's the internal stuff, the actual writing that we get hooked to.
Yeah. Okay. The next question again on character. How do you personalize characters while writing dialogues so that they all don't sound the same? While writing in English, is it always necessary to have footnotes for culture specific? Okay, it's a different question though. Is it always necessary to have footnotes for culture specific words from other languages, or is it better to let readers deduce what it means based on the context?
So I'll answer these in separate parts. Yamini, right? Yeah. So how do you personalize? So I would say if you're having this problem of personalizing characters while writing dialogues, it might be that you haven't been able to differentiate the characters in your head enough, right? Like try and really, you know, kind of price them apart in terms of who they are as characters, like um because it, you need, the other thing, and this is related to the earlier question about creating characters, is also like try and give your characters, observe how people around you behave. Everyone has these kind of observable traits. You see people, you can observe them, and through that, give that to your characters. Give, if someone has a particular way of speaking, you don't have to base your characters on people, but you can give small things, like small, like I'm told I wave my hands around a lot when I talk, right? So you can give that to a character. You can give that to, like um um there's all sorts of things. You just try and pick up on things that you find quirky or interesting or something, because that, if you give that to a character, don't overdo it, but like one, if there's a character is an important thing, you have to make them memorable in some way. It's either by something that they like, um they have to give them something that defines them, something that makes them stand out on the page for the reader, so the reader registers them, and just always remembers them later in the novel and all that, so they don't confuse them later in the novel. So reading a book by Alan Hollinghurst, who does it really well, he's just like, it's like a small little aside that he will put when he's introducing you to a character. He'll say something that about that character that makes you think, oh, okay, yeah, this is an important character, and I have to just remember who they are. And don't give people like funny accents or like funny quirks of, funny ways of speaking or all that, like that. It's like you don't want to do that, because that comes across really badly on page. Like it's it can come across as condescending sometimes, or it can come across as um badly done. Usually it's very tricky to do that. So, to make them speak in like normal English, the way we speak to one another, but just remember that they are different people and they want different things. So, another good thing to remember when you're writing dialogue is dialogue. This is a distillation of a lot of writers kind of thinking about dialogue. I read this in an essay, and they said dialogue is about conflict. All dialogue, everything else is chatter, it's conversation, and you don't want conversation. You want dialogue in your story. So it's like you put your characters when your characters, otherwise it should all be narrative. Your characters should speak to each other when they want opposing things, right? That's when you make them talk. Otherwise, don't make them talk. Don't have them just talk, say hello and all that stuff, right? It should be dialogue should be very consequential, and it should actually be two people, like kind of wanting, not, it doesn't have to be the same thing, but like just that there should be a difference of worldview or difference of approach to something. When I was writing Laila, I remember one of the scenes I was really happy with was um, it had to do with Shalini. My protagonist is visited by her brother-in-law, and he's kind of, he's a more conservative. He's a Muslim guy. He's conservative, and his brother is not, and he's kind of trying to make his brother and his brother's wife slightly more conservative. And they were sitting in this kind of living room, and in my head was like a New Delhi living room, and I remember that scene, feeling that scene worked well because these two, they were not addressing what the tension was, like, but they both wanted, they had this Shalini was wanting to stand up and tell her brother-in-law, stop trying to control my life, you have no right to say anything to me, right? But she didn't want to say that and create this rupture in the family, and he wanted to control her, but he also was being sort of like, as people are, like suggesting things but not being like, you have to do this, so it's that, I think, gave that scene the tension it needed, and helped the scene work, I think, for me. And made the characters real and made the characters realistic. So try and think in terms of, conflict when dialogue. And remember, dialogue should be like the distillation of, like, it's not conversation. You don't want the ums and ahs and how we actually speak together, speak to each other is not dialogue, right? In a book, dialogue is crafted. It's intentional. It's thought about.
That's really good. Like being able to differentiate what dialogue is and what is conversation just clears out a lot of confusion.
Great. So, also about the footnotes, I would say avoid footnotes. Like that's not, like it's your job as a writer. I would say I don't. I mean, I don't have rules as such when I'm grading fiction, but like I would really not be happy if one of my students was putting footnotes in. Some writers do it. David Foster Wallace does it. There's a great book by I'm forgetting her name right now, but it's a science, sort of magical realism. Jonathan Strange and Dr. Norrell. I don't know if anyone's read it. She uses footnotes really well, but she kind of like it actually, like, she uses it to complete the universe in a sense. There are outside text she's referring to. It's a very beautiful, intentional thing that she does. But never use footnotes as this kind of translator or like a cultural kind of explainer or something like that. That the reader should be able to pick up from from the way you have explained. The writer, that's the writer's job, to be able to, for the reader to be able to understand. I mean, think about how those early writers, like, like Agatha Christie or whatever, Hercule Poirot was always bursting into French, or like, and European writers don't feel the need to explain themselves to us, like we shouldn't feel the need to explain ourselves to them. I really don't think we need to. They honestly, you'd be surprised. Like when Lila was read abroad, I was surprised. I thought there would be so many things that would be too subtle for an English reader or an American reader, and the people were talking to me about those things. And I was like, wow, that really worked even for this. So, yeah, trust the reader; they'll get it. But do your job as a writer, which is like explain, don't explain, but like depict that thing in a way that it should come across. The meaning should come across.
The next question is from Shraddha Vianney. Hi Prayag, thanks for sharing your writing process. I have a couple of questions for you. Number one is, who are some of your favorite Indian writers, past and present? And the second is, as a writer and a teacher of creative writing, what is your view of AI and its sweeping impact on writing and publishing?
Okay. Some of your favorite Indian writers. There's a long list. Upamani Chatterjee is definitely one. He was my hero growing up. I loved his novels. I loved his short story and his novel. His first novel. Um, I read a lot of Rushdie. I've kind of gone off Rushdie in the last, I've not liked his last few novels at all, but I read a lot of Rushdie when I was younger. Um, my favorite, R.K. Narayan, definitely. I love him. He's a great writer. Uh, the current Jerry Pinto, I loved Emin Big Moon. That is wonderful. He's a great translator. We're talking strictly about fiction, right? I think the question probably, I mean, with nonfiction, it's a huge basket, but like fiction, I'm just trying to think of my favorites. Um, I'm also forgetting a lot of people, I'm sure. Like um, oh, Manto. Yeah, Sadat Hassan Manto definitely is up there. And um Geeta Mehta, I liked her. Karma Kola, I like that book a lot. And even Anita Desai, I liked her a lot. She's very good. She's one of my favorites. I don't know if anyone read her new novella. It came out the same month as Mother India. And she's such a, she's like whatever, 90, and she's globally published all her life. And it was really sad to see like her book like getting all these Amazon reviews, and like I was like, oh yeah. But yeah, so those would be some of my favorites. What is your view of AI and its sweeping impact on writing and publishing? So this is a very complicated question. I don't really, it with I do think it's such a nascent stage of AI that it's only going to get worse in that sense for us. It like the AI is going to get better and better at writing. I showed my students this year. Yeah, did anyone read the stories? This guy who owns Sam Altman, he who runs ChatGPT. He posted. It must have been when I was teaching, so it must have been in like February or maybe January. He posted a short story that was written by his chatbot or whatever it is, his engine, and 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 the Guardian asked like 5 or 6 writers, including the Pakistani writer Kamala Shamsi. They asked like 6 writers to respond to the story and say what they felt about the story. I showed it to my students. I didn't tell them it was written by AI, and I asked them to like tell me what they thought about it. And it was interesting because what I felt about the fiction was that uh, it was a little self-referential and a little like it felt a little like like I mean perhaps I was reading that meaning into it, but it just felt like it was written without any lived experience almost. And I think that is what I mean. You can make an AI thing as intelligent and as whatever as possible, but can you really teach it how to feel, right? And that's really what we want to convey. Like, that's why I say that's what we look for in work. That's what we look for in art. Like in all art, it's like it's an emotional response, and as the viewer, as the reader, whatever, and it's a feeling of connection. And perhaps AI will be able to build those feelings of connection, will understand how great writers do it and do it, and it'll be able to do it. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to read a novel written by an AI bot or whatever it's called. I don't know if I'd be able to, even if people tell me it's really good and all, like there's so many great books to read. Like, why do I need to read something by I never have enough time to read. Like, why do I need to read something written by ChatGPT's, offspring or whatever? Like, and there's yeah, and the other thing is that like it's actually having a huge impact on the question that who asked it? Shraddha. like, it's having a huge impact on publishing also. It's having I have a faculty chat WhatsApp group, and today someone posted on that WhatsApp group about how a teacher was caught using ChatGPT by a student. Like, this professor was using it to grade his papers or something, like he can give comments on the essays and things like that. So everyone's at it. And in publishing now, Meru Gokhale. Oh, it's a good thing for all of you, actually, first-time writers. Like Meru Gokhale, I don't know if you know her. She used to be the editorial director of Penguin, the head boss at Penguin. And then she left. Her husband was unwell, and then she left. And she started now. The last things that she's done now, she started this AI kind of website tool. It's an AI tool strictly that specifically helps first-time writers. It's meant to be something that I don't know how it works at all. And I'm sure she's charging quite a lot of money for it. I think she charges in pounds or something. I don't know. I have no idea about how much she charges, and this is definitely not an ad, but I don't know. I don't even know how it works. Like, but she was telling me that it's been very successful, and a lot of people are coming to her to work on their first drafts. I don't see how, I mean, I could see how perhaps how ChatGPT could give you ideas and edits and things like that. But like, to write a novel from the ground up, I don't think these whatever the computer guys really understand what it takes to write answers, like what it takes to write a novel. I don't know.